see if anybody jumps on here real quick. So far, no. Holding out until I get a body or two on here. Still nobody. Boy, not feeling the love today. South to Cincy. Yeah, hadn't started yet. I got 1 minute in and I got nobody watching. This is under the title of Cannonball. Still on. Come on, I need a couple of bodies on here at least before I can start battling. Aha! I got one. I ain't quite starting yet because I only got one person. Alright, cool. That's one in a row, Rich. Give it a minute here. I get one or two more victims on here. I can start babbling. All right, you're one in a row. I actually promoted this. I'm going 63, dude. 62 or 63 is all I do in this van is for gas mileage, which I am currently getting 22.4. And it says if I go non-stop, I'll be in Laredo at 4 o'clock in the morning. All right. I'm showing 3. Maybe I can start talking with 3. All right, I got a load on board. The topic of today is the Cannonball run. And currently I picked up a small load on the outskirts of Columbus, Ohio, going to Laredo. It's just short of 1,500 miles, little tiny box. But right now, the topic for today is the Cannonball Run. I want to talk about what it is, its history, and my personal attachment to it. If you are Gen X or older, you're probably more than familiar with the Cannonball, but for the younger people, not so much. So, to put it in the simplest form, the Cannonball Run is a very real, underground, unsanctioned, cross-country, wildly illegal road race. It's there, and most people's knowledge of the Cannonball Run comes from the movie that came out in 1982, which was a comedy movie, but it was based on a real thing. And the origins of the Cannonball is like, where did it come from? It says you were getting honked at, you were driving so slow. Oh, shut up. The origins of the Cannonball come from American culture and oil. Starting in the 1950s, all cars built moving forward were fuel pigs. Big V8 powered, 8-10 mile per gallon fuel pigs, basically. Land yachts. And the reason they did that is gas back then cost about 12 cents a gallon, 15 cents a gallon. Nobody cared. Because they were buying the oil off the Arabs. The Arabs didn't know any better. They would just switch between countries when somebody decided to charge more. So ultimately, what ended up happening was the Arab countries came together and formed OPEC, which is the oil-producing exporting corporation, and they merged their interests and jacked the price of oil to the roof. The results of that is gas prices went up exponentially, and there was also shortages because, again, everybody drove cars that got terrible gas mileage. And for anybody younger than Gen X, they probably don't remember, but back then they had lines at gas stations. They had fuel shortages. It was like certain days of the week you could buy gas. If the last number of your license plate, there was even and odd. There were times when they had laws in certain states where the fuel station attendant would stick their head in your window and look at your gas gauge, and if you had more than half a tank of gas, they wouldn't sell you fuel. It's a real weird situation. At the time, back in up to the early 70s, each individual state got to pick its own speed limits for the highway. But the feds came along, and by the way, Nevada was unlimited. They didn't even have a speed limit on the open highway. That one I know off the top of my head. So the feds came along in an attempt to save fuel independence by initiating a national 55-mile-an-hour speed limit. And if people used to go in 75, 85, or whatever they want to go, being forced to go 55 was horrible. And if you don't know just how bad that is, may I suggest getting a car on a long cross-country trip, get out in the middle of nowhere and set your cruise control at 55 and do that for an hour, and you will fully understand where serial killers come from. So if you look at a car built in the early 80s, look at the speedometer, it'll go nothing above 85, and there'll be an emphasis on 55, because that's all they wanted you to do. And the 1970s were a very strong anti-government, anti-establishment, anti-authoritarian period of time in American history. There was a guy by the name of Brock Yates who worked for driving magazines, Car and Driver, Road and Track, something along those lines. And he was looking for something to write about, and he started digging around in the records and asked himself, okay, how fast has somebody driven across the United States? And he dug around and found a guy named Irwin Baker, better known as Irwin Cannonball Baker, who was a guy who made automotive records from the 1930s to the 1960s, and on cars and motorcycles and whatnot. And I think it was in the 1930s he drove coast to coast and registered a time and put it down in a record book, and then nobody else ever said anything about it. It was kind of left alone. So he said, aha, here's an angle. So he got together with a guy he was working with and said, I tell you what I want to do. I want to drive across the United States as fast as I can in light of the 55-mile-an-hour speed limit, and go faster and do it faster than Irwin Baker did. So they had an early 1960s Ferrari, and they said, okay, where are we going to start? Where are we going to stop? You got to have a point. So they picked their work office, which was in Lower Manhattan Island, New York City. They looked at the map and went to California, because if you draw a straight line from New York to Los Angeles, it's across the United States at an angle, which makes it a longer drive. And they picked Redondo Beach, because it's right on the water, and a marina called the Portofino. They said, okay, that's going to be our finish line. So they got in their Ferrari and they took off in 1971. Raced across the United States, did it in 35 hours and some minutes, which broke the record. And he wrote an article, because he was a columnist for the magazine, wrote an article, went out, and the automotive world went bonkers. Oh my God, how do I get to be a part of this? When's the next race? I mean, it was insane, the reaction. And because so many people got so excited about it, they established an actual cannonball race, and the word cannonball came from Irwin Cannonball Baker, and they officially called it the Sea to Shining Sea Cannonball Baker Memorial Trophy Dash. Nice big name to go with this thing. So they set up a race, organized race. I'm not sure how many teams were involved, but it was in 1972. They did the run. Everybody had fun. Some people got good times. They basically break it into three categories. There's team, solo, and motorcycle. And that was kind of the groups. And they wrote about it. And the Cannonball Run became part of the American culture. A second race was conducted in 1975, Well, a bunch of people showed up. People had a lot of fun, good times were to be had, made the newspapers, people heard about it. The final official Cannonball was held in 1979. There were 40 teams involved, and they had to move it out of New York City up to, you go straight north out of New York City, to Darien, Connecticut. And if anybody who's ever set foot in New York City knows that finding parking can be a bit of a challenge, well, trying to find parking for 40 cars. So they moved it to Darien, Connecticut, to a place called the Lock, Stock, and Barrel Restaurant, which today no longer exists. But if you watch the movie, it was actually filmed there at that same place. And the guy who's holding the microphone that says, "You're the biggest bunch of misfits and outlaws ever to be assembled," that's Brock Yates. That was his cameo in the movie, incidentally. So in 1979, they ran the last official Cannonball race, and then they called it off because they said, "Hey, urban sprawl. There's too many cars on the road, and the worst part, the law enforcement knows about it. Everybody knows cannonballs are going on. It's not like a big mystery, and it became a kind of a game for law enforcement to catch people, and you're just looking for fast-driving cars with big antennas on them." So they said, "Okay, we're going to stop." Now, there was some of those same people set up something called the U.S. Express, and that is kind of like the Cannonball. I don't know where it started, but it ended in San Francisco. That ran from 1980 to 1983. There's not a lot of information about it, but they don't do that anymore. So after 1983, the Cannonball Run kind of faded away. People quit talking about it, and that was pretty much it. 1982, the movie came out, which was a comedy. I was 14 years old, and as a 14-year-old with no driver's license, that was a pretty important thing. And my friend Rich and Chris, we all went and saw it. And of course, you're like, "Wow, I want to do that. I want to do that." Don't exactly have a Ferrari. So move the clock forward 2 decades. In 2004, some guy and a buddy got in a BMW, modified it for the run, and he did the Cannonball route, not as a group effort, but by himself. These two guys, and they did it in 32 hours and 7 minutes, and the actual overall record was 32 something else higher than that. So he actually broke the record. I'm not sure how he found who to tell this to or what the controlling agency was, but it got listed, and there is a documentary out there called 3207, because that was considered crazy speeds going that fast. So 3207 was the new benchmark, and all of a sudden people are paying attention to Cannonball. Again, not an organized race, just an individual person making a run. And when you make a run, you have to have some kind of proof, which is a witness, fuel receipts, toll receipts, and nowadays with digital cameras, I didn't know this by the way, when you take a digital shot and you swipe up, it shows the date and location, the time and everything. But you got to prove you did it. You just can't, do the "I'm a Navy SEAL" routine where you wake up and say, "Oh yeah, I did a Cannonball, here was my time." That doesn't work. It's been tried. There's a couple of guys that have tried it. But suddenly people are getting interested in it, and then a guy who's in the automotive industry named Alex Roy, he did a run in 2006, and his time was 31 hours and 4 minutes, which was considered crazy fast. He got on the talk show circuits. The guy was real famous for the time, and they said that's it. You can't get faster than 31 hours and 4 minutes to drive roughly 2,800 miles across the United States. This is as far as it's going to go. He was celebrated and whatnot. Right in the middle of that time, there was a guy. His name is Richard Rollins. He owns the Gas Monkey Garage. You probably heard of him. He popped up and said, "Oh yeah, I did a Cannonball, and my time was 31:59. He didn't know that Alex Roy had a 31:04, so he's claiming the record. What was weird is he didn't have a shred of evidence to show that he did it. There's no witnesses, there's no receipts, there's nothing. It's just him saying, "I did it." And of the two people I know that have questionable runs, you'll notice their time is just under the top of the hour, with a minute or two. Not like a 35, 30. It's a 34:58. It's always just under the hour. That's something you got to watch for. But he claimed it, but Alex Roy waited a year to release his information because, for legal reasons. Because he had a data chart of how fast he was going and stuff like that. So that was kind of it. It hit the media. People were interested in it. And then along comes a guy, a guy by the name of, what is his name? I can't remember the guy's name. Well, anyway, in 2013, a team got together and they did a run in an older Mercedes, spent a bunch of money on a 3-man team. They made a run in 2013. It broke the magical 30-hour mark and actually broke 29 hours. They had what is called the perfect run, which is almost impossible. No holdups, no traffic, no weather, no car accidents in front of you, no stops. They had a perfect run, and they did it in 28 hours and 50 minutes. And just absolutely incredible. And that hit the airways and went out. And that's when suddenly there was now an open organization, kind of quiet, but people doing this. They have a page on a YouTube page. I'm not going to give out their name, but there is a YouTube page for these guys where they all hang out together and they talk and stuff. And they had a couple of runs they did that were related to Cannonball, but modified versions. They had one that ran from like 07 to 12 or so. It was called the 2904. The 2904 was basically a Cannonball, but your car, your gas, your food, tolls, everything you did minus safety equipment couldn't be more than $2,904. So basically, guys were driving POSs across the country, and some of the cars made it, some of the cars didn't. They fell apart. That was kind of the joke. They had another race called the Musket Ball, which you could drive whatever you wanted, but they would dyno test it. Couldn't have more than 100 horsepower, which again is to slow things down, but it's kind of funny if you think about it. So coming into the 2000 into the teens, the 20 teens, into that area, the time started dropping. There's a guy in Cleveland named Doug Tabbitt. He got a team together and they did a 27-something in a 700 horsepower Mercedes, which was awesome. Well, as I mentioned previously, I was a helicopter pilot for almost 4 decades, and that industry is feast or famine. It's either banging or it's not. And during one of the famine stages of it, I was working at a buddy's body shop. I think this was in 2017 for a little while. And Cannonball stuff was flying around, so I started thinking about it. And I said, okay, if I was to do a Cannonball, how would I do it? And I started discussing it with guys around me. And one thing guys will do when you discuss the Cannonball run is, yes, they're interested. Yes, they want to go. Yes, they want to do it. Until it's time to, it's easy to talk about Cannonball stuff until it's time to actually do Cannonball stuff. So I talked to some of my friends about it. They were like, yeah. And then they, faded away. I didn't hear from them again. And that's when I found that Facebook group. And the Facebook group consists of a few Cannonballers and some hanger-ons, such as myself, that are interested, that want to, stick their toe in the pool. And I was asking questions and nobody was answering me. But another guy in there that was doing the same thing I was doing started talking to me. And we came together and said, you know what, let's do a run. So in early 2019, we said, we're going to do one in the fall. Cannonball season is in the spring and in the fall. In the wintertime, the weather's too bad. In the summertime, there's too many people on vacation. There's too much traffic. So it's a springtime or a fall time thing. And this was late spring. So we were going to work out a Cannonball to do in the fall of 2019. And there is a ton of research. It's like going out and cannonballing is not something you do. You just don't roll out of bed and go, hey, I'm going to go out and race across the United States. You need to know where you're going, what time of the day you want to hit certain areas, how your car is set up, what state drives what patrol cars, what their patrol cars look like in the dark, from front and back, and just where do they sit? On the left side of the road? Do they sit in the middle? There is endless hours of research that goes into this. Did the research, figured out where everything was, had this guy worked out. He had a car that was quick, he had the electronics, he had the right radar, he had a scanner, he had everything. We got within 3 weeks of pulling the trigger, and he went silent on me. Suddenly, we're getting ready to meet up to go to New York, silent. So he turned into one more of those, yeah, I want a Cannonball, until it was time to Cannonball. So that was a waste of time. And I said, that's it, I'm going to Cannonball. That's when I decided I wanted to go make a run solo. I don't want to have anybody else with me. I don't have to worry about anybody else flaking out on me or not doing the hold up there. So that's the day I decided I'm going to Cannonball on my own. And I actually outfitted my own personal car. I had the 32-gallon fuel tank, and I put the car together, and I was getting ready to go because it was almost the end of Cannonball season, and I got called back to work. So I said, all right, I'm going in the spring of 20. And I planned everything around that. And then I started thinking about my car because I had my '08 Volkswagen Bug, which is a surprisingly fast car, by the way, a 5-cylinder engine. And I was going to use that car because it was quick, it was comfortable, and it's low-key. It doesn't drag attention, doesn't draw attention. So I drive out to Nevada to go back to work in Las Vegas, and one of the wheel bearings went south on me, and I had to spend some money. And then the car had right at 100,000 miles, and I started going, I got a 100,000-mile car. There are so many little things that can go wrong with a 100,000-mile car that I need to use something else. And I'm trying to figure out what kind of car do I get that I don't want to keep, that I can get rid of, that, it's kind of a fight at that. And then I heard about a guy who rented a Charger, a Dodge Charger, and I went, ooh, rental car, unlimited mileage, go beat the crap out of it. Okay, now we're talking. So we switched to rental car. But what rental car? What car, if you're going to go cannonballing, what car can you sit in for a long period of time that's going to be comfortable and fast and low-key and get decent mileage? And I came up with a Jetta, because the Jettas are quick, the German-made, huge trunk, room to put in a tank. So I planned my entire Cannonball around a Volkswagen Jetta rental car. So here we go. So I have the date picked. The snow season's over. I'm going to be off work. I'm going to be back home. I'm going to make a run in March of 2000. I get a reservation, and I want the Jetta specifically. There's a local car rental place north of Houston. They got all kinds of fun stuff, but not necessarily the fun stuff I'm looking for. But they do get Jettas in there occasionally, and I literally said I want to run a Jetta, but if you read the fine print, it says Jetta or equivalent. And I'm like, I don't want the or equivalent. So I changed my reservation to Houston, to the big airport, and because I'm tall, I was going to use the line of crap that I have to have a Jetta because I'm tall, and I don't fit in whatever they were going to offer me other than that car. So the day comes when I'm going to drive down there, we're going to bring the car back up, install the fuel tank, put all the electronics in it, and the next day I'm going to boogie and head towards New York. So the morning I wake up and my wife is laying there in bed, treated like a coffin. She's sick as a dog, and I can't use her to go down there, so I'm like, great. So I prop her up the best I can, but I have no way of going to pick up the car. Now, I have a long history with a relationship with Volkswagen Bugs. In my life, I've owned 5 of them. They're my very favorite car. Communists don't make them anymore. And just for fun, I went and drove by the local rental car lot, and there was a Volkswagen Bug sitting there. Mind you, this is 2020, and that's a 2019 model car. And rental lots do not have last year's cars. That's just not how they do rental cars. Never had I seen a Bug there before. So I wandered inside and I said, hey, what's the story on the Bug? And the lady behind the counter said it's available. And I went, I'll take it. So I got this car. I rented it ultimately for 10 days for $349, being the best $349 I ever spent in my life. And spoiler alert, I put 7,000 miles on the car. Took it home, drove home to the wife and says, "You're not going to believe this. I got my bug out front, and now I pull up in this one, which was a 1.8 turbo with a 6-speed." And I said, "You're not going to believe this." And she got up out of her coffin and peeked out the window, and there's this bug looking back at her. She goes, "That's a sign." So I took it to my buddy's shop, and we stuck the tank in it. We may have drilled a few holes in the back, and hooked up all the equipment, put all my electronics in it. And then the next day, or that afternoon, I said, "Well, here goes." They said, "I'm going to come back a hero or arrested or something." And that afternoon of the next day, I took off. This is out of Houston area for New York. And coming up on this date from the previous 2 weeks, I had purged myself of caffeine products. I didn't have any type of caffeine of any sort because, we're usually inundated with it. So I went, got in the car from Houston area, drove nonstop to New York City. It was 1,600 miles with no caffeine in my system. I was tired, needless to say. But I made it. By the time I got there, I was zombied up tired. But I made it nonstop. Got to test the car out. The only horrifying thing I found about the car I didn't like is it had a governor on it. Surprise! The car wouldn't go over 115, and bugs will do 130. And I didn't discover this until I was 200 miles from my house when I had a chance to wind it up. So I already had my wings clipped. So that kind of ruined the buzz I was going on. I have a fuel tank in the trunk. I have an electric switch, and we tested it. It flows 1 gallon per minute. So you can watch the gas gauge go down, hit the button, start in-flight refueling, as I like to say. And I tested the system. The system worked good. Everything worked out as it was supposed to. I got to a hotel in New Jersey. There was another guy on that Facebook page I started talking to. His name is Josh. He's a musician out of New York. And he is a local from the area, and he wanted to meet me there and help guide me out of the city because he kind of knows the area. And I was like, cool. So I met him up, went to the Red Ball, got up that next morning. I slept that night, or that day. When I got there, it was like 9 o'clock in the morning. I slept all day, and then I got up, ate, went back to sleep, slept all night. So when I got up in the morning, I was as well rested as humanly possible. I had my one giant monster drink and some peanuts and snack foods and stuff for the drive. Met up with Josh. We talked for a while. We rode in his car around and said, okay, here's how we're going to do this. We get to the Lincoln Tunnel. Lincoln Tunnel, it's like 17 miles down, whatever the heck that was, and I-80, and then it's game on. So I'm looking at my watch. I tried something different. I was going to leave on a Thursday. Most people leave on Friday night. That's traditional. So at noon on a Thursday, I said, all right, let's go. And Josh got in his car. His uncle was with him. And he took off. And a lot of guys, a lot of cannonballers have problems getting off Manhattan Island, getting Lincoln Tunnel. Some guys take 15, 20 minutes just depending on the traffic. And there's a lot of traffic in there. At exactly noon, I hit the stopwatch, I grabbed the radio, I said, let's go. I pulled out, the street's empty, which was a shocker. We blasted up the street, traffic light was green, nobody was there. Went through that one, turned the corner, green light. We hit the Lincoln Tunnel in 7 minutes, which has got to be a world record. Went through the tunnel, which was crowded, came out. It's a 3-lane road to get to I-80. Cars everywhere. I said, just give me the I-80 and it's game on. Well, Josh has a driving tactic that I am unfamiliar with. He doesn't drive the space between bumpers. He does the space between door handles. He drives between cars. So I'm trying just to keep up with him. I'm not really thinking about the race. They just catch him. And all of a sudden we get on 80, and again, wall of traffic. There's cars everywhere. It's noon on a Thursday. All 3 lanes are plugged. So I'm chasing Josh, zigzagging in and out, and he's going between cars, literally, when there's an opening. And I'm fighting and kicking and clawing, trying to catch up to him. And he said he'd give me 100 miles. And I was doing everything in my power just to catch him. And I finally caught him, and he was getting off the on-ramp. He was on the off-ramp. And I went, wait a minute. He goes, yeah, that's your 100 miles. He says, you're on your own. I said, okay, cool. And at the 100-mile mark, my overall average speed was a whopping 67. That's how much traffic I was dealing with. So Josh pulls off. I'm still fighting cars. And then about 10 minutes later, all the traffic disappeared, and I had the entire highway to myself. and I smashed this car to the limiter and left it there. And I am rolling up and over the hills going, okay, this is what we're looking for. There's nobody out there, it's just me, up and down, up and down, up and down. A lot of fun. I come around a corner, a rolling turn, and there's 3 lanes. There's a dump truck in front of me. He's in the middle lane. There's a dump truck on the right side of the road. I see him. I see the guy in front of me. I drift into the show-off lane. The dump truck makes what is essentially a 90-degree turn because he's barely moving to pull off the road, and I went off the road, one set of tires on the asphalt, one set of tires in the grass, shot around this guy, and then got back up on the road. He's trying to clip me as he's just decided to make a 90-degree turn. And the crown of the road had me slingshot back over to the right side, and there's a guy on the on-ramp in a U-Haul truck, and he just moves on over. He doesn't signal. He just changes lanes. I end up flying past him on the other side. I look in the mirror. He's driving with his right hand and talking on his phone with his left hand. That's why his turn signal wasn't used. I was like, oh, that was fun. And then proceeded to race out of, I was in Pennsylvania at the time, and then I proceeded to race out of Pennsylvania. Didn't have too many problems with Pennsylvania. Hit a toll road, hit the toll roads in Pennsylvania, had to wait for those. That was a little frustrating. Got going into Ohio. Now, Ohio is a big scary place to Cannonball because they don't have the death penalty for speeding, but it's not far from it. And one thing I studied about Ohio is the Highway Patrol doesn't drive on the roads. They set up overwatch ambushes for speeders. They don't sit on the right side, they sit in the middle. There's a concrete wall about chest high, so a car going the other way, a patrol car going the other way can't really see you and can't do anything about it. But there are crossovers, and they sit in the crossovers, and coming up on them there's a big red reflector to let you know there's a crossover. So I hit Ohio. I got over in the right lane, and I'm doing triple digits, and there was not that many cars on the road. It was almost perfect conditions, and I'm looking at the center of the road and watching for the red cones, and I'm doing triple digits, just holding it there, going, this is perfect. And there was 3 or 4 cops sitting there. I mean, it's time you see them come, you back off, and Waze would show you what was there. I'd blow on by them, and then speed back up again. And Ohio was really a good, even though it's supposed to be the scary part, Ohio turned out to be a really good part of the Cannonball. And then I got into Indiana, and it was kind of more toll roads, and it was kind of the same as far as having to stop the tolls, and then the concrete wall started getting smaller and smaller, and eventually the concrete wall went away, which took away a lot of my blocking. It started getting dark out. And then I rolled into Illinois, and it was kind of around rush hour, and it was raining, and I got slowed down in Chicago, down to 55 for quite a while. And then the traffic finally peeled off, and I got going again in the dark. Iowa is a scary place. Iowa is a very scary place. I had a fuel tank, and I did the math, and I figured out I could do over 1,000 miles per fuel load. So my first stop was going to be in eastern Iowa for fuel. And I thought I had the right place dialed in, and I didn't. Whatever I had dialed up as an address wasn't there. So I'm low on fuel. I'm in the middle of nowhere, and I got to find a gas station. So I found what appeared to be a gas station, and it wasn't. It was some kind of a restaurant. It was the middle of the night by now. And I see one. The gas pumps are lit up, and the station was, and I went turn into a BP on the right side of the road. And again, the pumps were turned on, but the gas station was closed, so it actually turned out perfect. And I whip in, jump out. I got some photos of this. Swipe the card, stick the pump into the big tank. I have a pee bag. I didn't have a choice. You can't stop. I was literally wearing a pee bag. I would drain a pee bag, refuel the vehicle. I was stopped about 8 minutes. Filled up, topped off. There's nobody around, but tearing out of the parking lot, blew through a traffic light, blew through a stop sign, hit the on-ramp, and had this car back up to triple digits as fast as it would accelerate. It was a turbocharged car, so it was actually pretty fast. So I'm saying, okay, my Cannonball experience, here's my first fuel stop, kind of blew it because, let me check my app here, kind of blew the whole thing because I didn't have the right address saved, which is my fault. Wait a minute. a second. I'm trying to mess with my GPS here. So that was my fault. And I got going, and you're playing high-speed road racing, and you're racing around, not trying to get a speeding ticket while you're trying to break world records. You need to have in the dark, if you're speeding in the dark, you need to have some other vehicles around you. The police don't just drive around with their radar detectors flipped on conveniently for you to pick up with your detector. They don't run radar guns like that. So if you have a few cars on the road around you, the police will flip the radar on and off occasionally. That's kind of how that game is played. Well, I'm in the middle of nowhere. I'm driving at ludicrous speed. I have no vehicles on the road. I am out there by myself, which is good if you want some space, but it's dark and I don't know what's out there. So I am triple digit, pushing my luck, driving as fast as my little car will carry me. And normally how a radar detector works is if the radar is on in the distance, you'll catch a little, I call it a sniff. Kind of a little sniff. And the closer you get, it'll start to warm up. And I had a high-end unit in my car that would detect an incredible range. So I'm getting after it, and my radar goes from dead silent to wide open, as loud, squealing, screeching sound it could possibly make, which tells me that there's a cop sitting in the dark, and he just blasted me with instant on. I'm into triple digits. How a radar works is it bounces off your vehicle, gives them a return, and it gets you a speed. The size of the target, the size of what they're bouncing the radar off of, has a lot to do with how good of a return. A truck, a big 18-wheeler, is going to give a better return than a motorcycle. And there has to be something on that vehicle that it reflects off of. In the modern world, it's your headlight buckets and your license plate. By mere happenstance, the license plate, the front license plate of the car, fell off back in New York City. I found it. It was in the trunk later. But the license plate was in the back of the car. And I think what happened is he shot me a little further out than I needed to be. And light-colored cars reflect more than a dark-colored car. And this car was black. It's roundy on the front end. It has a plastic bumper and wraparound, and it had no license plate giving a nice big flashback. So when the radar hit me, I don't think he got a good return. And I had my high beams on. Had I flipped my high beams off, that would have been admitting that I have a radar detector, and he probably would have pulled out. But I left my high beams on, took my foot off the gas, grabbed the parking brake, held the thumb down, and dragged the parking brake up under my armpit as hard as I could. And I brought the car down to about 75, which is roughly what the speed limit was. There was like a 3-second pause, and he hit me again with a blast. And I guess he was happy because I just kept cruising along, and I went by him. And I finally saw him after a while. I think he shot me out of range. I went over the next hill and wound the car back up again. And that told me he was probably the only guy out there tonight. And using that information, at least psychologically, I was able to speed up, accelerate, and go back to whatever the car would do, that 115, and kept it there all the way through the rest of Iowa. Nebraska, I did not encounter a single police vehicle, and a little voice told me there's no police out here. I don't know why. The little voice said there's nobody out here, don't worry about it. So I'm driving this Volkswagen Bug for everything it'll give me, which was, again, it was saying 112 on the GPS, 112, 150 miles an hour. You remember that guy that I was supposed to go cannonballing with? Yeah, him. He was supposed to, he calls me like a month after he shined me on, and he just played the, my wife, and I don't want to spend the money. But then he got a chance to redeem himself, because he's out of Colorado. I said, can you spot for me coming into the state of Colorado, coming down 76, which is coming off of 80 in Nebraska and going towards Denver? He said, absolutely. He's going to hole up in a hotel right there on the border in the town of Julesburg. He said, call me, give me like 30 miles morning, I'll get out there and I'll spot for it. I'm like, all right, cool. Well, I'm 30 miles from Julesburg, and I call his phone, and it rings off the hook, rings off the hook, rings off the hook. Nothing. I call it again, it rings off the hook, rings off the hook. Nothing. Third time I call, it goes to voicemail. I said, okay, this guy has now burned me twice. So I'm back to being on my own. I called Josh back in New York. It's, I don't know, 2 in the morning, and I say, hey, dude, this guy just did this to me again. At this point, my overall average, which the clock is, your average is based on from the moment you started, not considering stops, was 84 miles an hour. Which, if you are trying to, if your car is set up properly and you're doing a cannonball, whatever speed you want to average, you need to kick and claw and fight to go 20 miles per hour faster. Whatever that number is you're looking for. So I'm at 84. I'm in a real good place right now. And he said, the words that it kind of threw me off, he said, protect your average. And that kind of spooked me. And I had been told that there were police all over 76 going down into Denver. So I got a little spooked by it. So I set my cruise on 87 and left it there. There's a truck up behind me just sitting in the middle of the road doing nothing. So I stayed at 87 miles an hour for quite a long time, and I was the only car on the road. And I'm expecting a cop to poke out at any moment, just to jump out and get me. Didn't happen. And as I was coming towards getting closer and closer to Denver, it dawned on me that I'm about to hit Denver during rush hour because cars were starting to fill up the road. And that's when I said, okay, I got to get going. I'm Cannonball, let's Cannonball. So I started winding the car up as soon as I got some daylight. And I'm zigzagging in and out of traffic. And then I hit Denver, and I got caught in Denver rush hour, which is painful. So I got slowed down to like 60 going through Denver, which sucks. And then I started climbing. I got through the city and started climbing out the other side, up the mountain, up 70. And I had from my research, I knew that everybody goes up the mountain in the day and then they come down at night, but they all get off at Silverthorne. And I got caught in heavy traffic, and somewhere going up the side of that mountain, my overall average dropped from 84 to 83. And that kind of, that hurt. It freaked me out a little bit. So I was actually losing average at this point. And I got caught in thick vehicles, and then suddenly everybody got off at Silverthorne, wide open road. By now it's daylight. I can see. I have the option to go fast. I'm a happy person. So I wind the car up as hard as it'll go, and I'm zigzagging. I had a plan in Colorado. I had a plan because I had researched. I'm going to go fast here. I'm going to slow down there. I just threw the playbook out the window and said, how fast can I make this car go through the mountains? And it performed wonderfully. The one problem, I run into is it had snowed at some point in the recent past, and it was warm out this day, and snow is melting, and there's runoff, and the water was always in a turn. It never crossed the road at a 90-degree angle. It always crossed the road right into turn. So I have to consider how fast am I driving and how fast can I take the turn. In Colorado, the mountains, they have what my wife calls a toboggan runs. They put a concrete wall, like a chest-high concrete wall, and the shoulder's like 3 inches, and then there's a concrete wall. So you're caught in the toboggan runs, which is what I was up against. Driving as fast as my little car will carry me. And there was a spot. I had running an app on my phone called Glimpse, which you can use, is free, and it just shows people where you are. It also shows people your speed. For cannonballing purposes, a Glimpse will give witnesses to see where you are, so you have people to confirm, you are doing what you're doing. And I had my mother watching me of a handful of people, and she said in the Colorado mountains, I hit 115 miles an hour, and I held it for like 3 minutes nonstop in the mountains, which I thought that's kind of cool. So I'm blasting along in the straightaway. I'm getting onto the western side. I'm going to pull in for gas in Grand Junction. And I'm in the right lane, and I come upon a guy driving an early 90s Nissan Econobox white car. And he's in the show-off lane, and I go flashing past him in the right lane. And I'm coming up on a turn with the water in the turn. I'm backing off. I look in the mirror, and here this guy comes. He thinks, he took a front by me going by him in a bug. So I'm slowing down for the turn, and he shoots past me on the hammer lane, makes the turn, and loses control of his car. His car spins out, spins around. I'm looking at him, and I see this terror on his face. He spins around backwards. I somehow thread past him, and I look back, and he spins back around a second time. And now he's going the same way we're going. I don't think he hit the wall. I don't know how he missed it, but I don't think he hit the wall. And then I didn't see him again. I got into Grand Junction on the east side of town. There's the Golden Gate gas station. And the distance from the Red Ball Garage in Lower Manhattan Island to that gas station is 2,011 miles. And I got there in 24 hours and 5 minutes. So I was able to move a Volkswagen Bug 2,000 miles in 24 hours. Pulled into the gas station, and it was crowded. I don't know why. For some reason, this middle of the day, there's all these cars at the gas station. Pulled up to a pump, plugged everything in, started filling my tanks, and there's people all around me. Well, I got to empty my pee bag. And it's kind of obvious what you're doing, and there's a woman on the other side of the pump standing there, and I got a pee bag, and I'm like, how am I gonna? She drives off. I take the bag over, and I know I'm not supposed to do this. I'm draining it in the garbage can, and the car pulls up, and I just lower my hand into the garbage bag. Yeah, I'm just standing with my hand in the garbage bag. Empty this out, throw it back in, get all the stuff filled up. I get in the car. I go ripping out of the parking lot. I mean, the pump's clicked off. I shove the hose back into the gas tank. I do all the things I got to do. I come roaring out of the parking lot, long stop sign. I hit the on-ramp, and I know because I saw the big tank in the trunk was full, and I looked down, and my gas gauge was half in the main tank, my primary tank. I'm like, are you kidding me? It turns out that the gas pumps, they have a limit. I was using gift cards, and apparently you can only put in so much money on a gift card, and I didn't fill the tank up. So I drive down the road a mile, and I know there's a Chevron. I pull off the road, I go back into a gas station, pull the hose out of my main tank, stuff it in, put in another 5 or 6 gallons, because I don't want to be in the middle of Los Angeles running out of gas. It's only 800 miles, but don't want to risk it. So I'm like, jeez. And I get out, I go back, stop again, put gas in the car for the 3rd time, come ripping out of the parking lot, getting ready to hit the highway, and there's a roundabout. And there's a woman in the right turn lane to get on the highway, and there's no cars, and she's just sitting there. So for the first, last, and only time during the entire drive, I tapped the horn. And then she started moving. Went around here, took off. It's about 15 minutes to the Utah border. There's one place the police sit on this side. It's up on a hill. And sure enough, there was a highway patrol sitting up on the hill, and I saw them, went by. It's raining right now. I got over the Rockies without getting snowed on. But now it's raining, which I don't really care. And I'm still getting it. And when you cross the border, there's a turnaround in the middle of the road. The road's 2 lanes here, a big grass strip, and then 2 lanes way over there. Or not grass, it's desert. And there's a turnaround. And if there's nobody there, it's a free-for-all to the next town, which I think is Green River. And it's like 90 miles. So I come around the corner, there's no cop there, there's nowhere to hide, there's no hidey holes. It's game on. So I smash the throttle to the floor. I come over the rise of a hill, and there's 2 cars. The speed limit is 80. These 2 cars are going 70, and they're holding hands. They're just shoulder to shoulder. Let's just both go 10 under, and we'll stay together. This went on forever, and the shoulder's like a foot. There's not like I can go around them or anything. And then eventually, after miles and miles and miles of this, so one guy gets out of the way. So then I get my straightaway, hammer the car to the floor. Okay, here we go. Now we're going. And I'm up triple digits. And I come over a hill, and I bump into another 2 cars holding hands going down the road. Get around these guys, and I start climbing up into there's a big twisty windy road. I-70 in Utah it's actually very beautiful, but it's a twisty windy road. Well, as I'm climbing, it's still raining, and as I'm climbing the road, the car gives off an audible bing. Like bing, what's bing? I don't like bing. Bing is bad. Bing is bad. It just told me it's below freezing. Okay, so now I got wet roads that zigzag, it's below freezing, and I'm trying to drive as fast as I can. So now I have to weigh how fast can I drive this car without sliding off the road and going into a ditch. That's kind of what I'm up against at this point. So I keep going fast as I can, Back and forth, back and forth. As I say, my kingdom for a straightaway. It was just constant turns. This went on forever, and I finally got out the backside. The altitude dropped abruptly, and then the freezing went away, and the roads were just wet again. And I said, okay, game on. And I'm going towards I-15. And a straightaway hitting I-15, there is a known patrol vehicle that sits there. It's a gray Dodge truck that's blacked out. And I hit the turn to go south on 15 in central Utah, and my radar started to sniff it, and sure enough, there he is, kind of hitting off, kind of quite a ways off the road, but he's there watching. So I backed off, went past him, went over the hill, hammered down, wide open as hard as the car would go for about 15 minutes, and that's when the snow showers started. Okay, I don't care about the snow showers, but apparently the humongous crowd of cars that were for some reason on the highway that day did, and the entire interstate slows down to 45 miles an hour forever. And we strolled along forever at 45 miles an hour. Absolutely mind-boggling. Well, so this is why we're slow. Sorry, traffic is just stopping for no reason. And I followed, 150 miles, going 45 miles an hour with all the lanes plugged up. And I tell you what, if I had a bazooka or a minigun or something. Anyway, finally get to the southern part of the state, and the road breaks into 3 lanes right when the snow stops falling. And then all these cars spread out in all 3 lanes to go 55. Well, this is when I started getting aggravated, and I actually, hate to admit this, I got on my shoulder and started passing people. I couldn't sit there and do this any longer. Went by a wall of cars, got an opening, raced down. And then I hit Houston, Las Vegas rush hour traffic. Stop and go, stop and go, stop and go. But for some strange reason, absolutely everybody gets off at Tropicana, and all of a sudden the road was open. So I was able to wind it back up to about 90, 95. Left Las Vegas. They have a checkpoint for fruit checkpoint, fruit and vegetable checkpoint. Had to stop there, no line. Getting on board, nope, took off. Going down the hill, going down 15 in California, they have noisemakers, radar detector noisemakers. They're all in the same frequency, and if you have a high enough end detector, it'll tell you what frequency it is, and you just keep watching. And if it's always the same one, it's just noise. It's not a real police traffic. So the radar detector is going off with a regularity, and I'm going as quick as traffic will allow. And there's people that are doing the let's hold hands and go 60 routine, which is maddening. Come down the mountain. I get into Los Angeles, and there's a ring around the outside loop is the 410. And the 410 loop I hit at the very back end of rush hour, so it was really close to being bad. But I hit 410, I look down, and I think I'm almost there. I am 90 miles from Redondo Beach. I am in Los Angeles, and I am 90 miles from my target in Los Angeles, which just seems odd to me. And it said, turn on this road and go 10 miles. Heavy traffic, going 80 plus miles an hour. Heavy traffic. Just don't stop and go. Just keep going. And it went. It kept moving. And then I turned again, and you got to go 27 miles on this road. And I'm going, please don't go to stop and go. Real thick, but 80 plus mile an hour traffic. Okay, this is working. And it was getting real stressful, because as soon as the traffic started seesawing, that was going to ruin everything. But it didn't actually happen. The traffic kept moving. Cars kept driving. And I was so happy with that, but I was losing my mind. And I finally got down to the last few miles, and I had a GoPro camera that I was filming. So I'm looking at my GPS here. I got to give 71. Okay. And my GoPro failed. It didn't work properly, and everything in it was corrupted, so I have nothing to show from my GoPro, except for one video which is on my page under my Cannonball playlist, but the little video that survived. My phone didn't really have the capabilities. And I was kind of narrating. I was losing my mind at this point. I get off the highway. I get to a traffic light in a turn lane, and I sit there forever. And the turn lane the light finally turns green, and a fire truck decides he needs to go through. So then I wasted a bunch of time waiting for the light to come around a second time, and I caught it. And I'm going through town, and I get up to an intersection, and it says, no right turn on red. What are you kidding me? I'm not even going to stop. And blew that no right turn. Raced up a hill. It was blind, and the GPS said it was straight, so I just kept going, and I actually got the car a little off the ground. Came down the other side. It took me into a 5 or 6 way intersection that I couldn't translate, and I just followed it. The line on the GPS and shot through and got caught at the last traffic light to get into the Portofino and sat there for a while and finally got a green light in a hole and zigzagged through and raced up and hit. If you ever look at the Portofino, there's a little sign. It looks like kind of like a sailboat sail. And I went tearing up to the sign and slammed on the brakes and stopped. And I made it. And I didn't break down. I didn't get in a car accident. I didn't get a speeding ticket. I actually made it all the way to the finish line. And there's a realization that I just drove across the entire width of the United States like an idiot. And when I stopped, I hit my stopwatches and I stopped everything. And I looked up at the time in the time that I wanted to do to make myself happy was at nothing more than 40 hours. My hike fantasy was 34 hours. And I got there in 34 hours and 4 minutes. And then it dawned on me the solo record was 34 hours and something. I didn't know what the something was. So I sat there in my car, I took a bunch of pictures, and I got in my phone and I started flipping through the car and the phone, and I found out the world record for a solo driver is 34 hours and 33 minutes. And I'm here in 34 hours and 4 minutes. And the realization of that slowly dawned on me that with all the weirdness that happened, this actually worked out with a Cannonball record. And that is a somber moment when you realize that you actually have it. And there's nobody standing there. My wife flew out to meet me to drive home, but I got there so fast, the plane wasn't even on the ground yet. Okay, hold on a second. I'm trying to change lanes here. Everybody and their brother wants to pass me. All right. Here's my big chance. Woohoo! I'm sorry. I'm coming into Cincy, and I need to get over here a little bit. So I had actually broken, so it was March 13th of 2020, and I actually had broken the world record, and I was taken aback. The name I couldn't spit out earlier, the guy with the Mercedes that did the 2850, his name is Ed Bolian. He has a web page called VidWiki, and he's a supercar salesman. He's in the industry. He's kind of the hub for Cannonball, Ed Bolian. And I didn't know what to do, so I called Josh and told him that, since he was part of this, this is the record. And he was like, whoa, well, I don't know what happened, but I was there for maybe 10 minutes. I drove to the hotel, and Ed Bolian called me, which I've never spoken to this guy, but he had my phone number. And I was like, oh, okay, hey, what's up? And he asked me, he goes, I understand you did this, you did that. I talked to some people in Glimpse, and he certified my run. So I'm good. I was happy. Again, my wife finally plane got there, and we took a bunch of pictures the next day. And, so I'm standing on the Cannonball run record for a solo driver. And to consider, most people use $100,000 cars. I'm using a $349 rental car. And there's guys that drop $150,000 into their run, and I think the rental car, gas, hotels, my wife's airfare, I think I spent $1,300, something like that. It's ridiculous. So the next day, the wife and I got up, drove over and took pictures, and we spent 2 days there. I just needed to rest. And then we started heading back to Texas, and I discovered that it is really hard to stop cannonballing once you've done it. Once you've driven that fast, that far, that hard, you get on the road, I'm looking 5 cars ahead and 3 moves away, and I'm starting to speed up. My wife's having to get me to slow down because it's really hard to back out of cannonballing. Really hard. And then we got home and we cleaned the car up. I washed it. I made it look nice. We pulled the tank out, took it back to the rental place, and it said on the paperwork, unlimited mileage, and I definitely got my unlimited mileage. And we picked up the car with 25,000 miles on it, turned it in with 32,000. And while we were standing there, my wife says, you need to buy that car. And I said, first off, I know how that car's been treated. And I wasn't in a need for another Volkswagen Bug, so we just turned it in. And a few minutes later, some college-age girl came out and got in it and drove off. There's another renter. I'm like, wait, see that about it? And about a month and a half later, we saw it on a used car lot. It was an Avis car lot. I looked at it, and I saw the little scratches and things. It was the same car. But that was my connection to the Cannonball. And 2 or 3 weeks later is when the COVID stupidity kicked off. And everybody stayed home. And all of a sudden, everybody and their brother decided to go cannonballing. So at this point, the Cannonball records are broken into 3 categories. There's the 1970s, the 2000s, and the COVID runs, because they are their own thing. And people were breaking records, and then 45 minutes later, somebody would pull in behind them and break a record. Somebody broke the solo record, but the same guy in the same car a few years earlier did a 37 something. And then all of a sudden he did like a 28. Same guy, same car. So he got like an 8-hour difference or something, because there's no cars on the road, there's no cops on the road, just a wide open road. So it was kind of a weird, so the records set during COVID are kind of a standalone thing, is how they were regarded. And the record that I set was broken the tail end of 24 by a guy. How he shattered, he had a BMW, he completely shattered it. So for about a 4-year period, I held the Cannonball Run world record, and you don't get anything for it. It's not like you get paid or anything. You don't get anything. You just get congratulations, feather in your cap. And since then, they've had, like I said, the musket ball, which was the bring any car you want, but they're going to dyno test it to make sure it doesn't have 100 horsepower. Which, if you haven't driven out west, 100 horsepower won't get out of the way. It's just kind of funny. They're using like old Saturns and stuff, Scions, just junk box cars. You put 2 or 3 grown adults in it with a long-range fuel tank and driving a car with less power than a chicken salad sandwich. You're not going to get anywhere in a big hurry. And I kind of got a kick out of that. So they do little races, but in the last couple of years, I've kind of faded away from it. I did it. I got away with it. I accomplished what I wanted to. It was kind of a bucket list thing. And I've kind of backed away from it. And a lot of people do. You get in, you get involved, and you get out. And there's still people out there doing runs and doing whatnot, but it's just not my thing. I don't want to spend the money on it. I had considered doing a Cannonball. There's a motorcycle record. I want to do it on a scooter. Not because it would be fast, because nobody would ever be stupid enough to do it on a scooter. And I had thought about that, and I am getting ready to bounce off 57 years old, and I'm starting to realize I can't just stay awake like I used to. I can't, because I'm doing this job right here, doing this expediting job, I'm finding out I don't have that endurance to be wide awake like I did, so I kind of faded away from that. Besides, it makes your butt sore. Scooter seats aren't all that comfortable. Somebody's honking at me. Where? There's nobody around me. Huh, interesting. Somebody's honking at me. I'm looking around. There's nobody there. Anyway, so that's something. There is a, by the way, there on a little side note, there is something called the scooter ball, or the scooter cannonball, and they start like in New England. It's like a 10-day event, and you go a few hundred miles. And they stop for the night, and they go a few hundred miles and stop for the night. They do little events and stuff, and guys dress up like Elvis and Shrek and do all kinds of stupid stuff. And I think the criteria is a scooter can't have, for what classifies a scooter, it can't have anything bigger than like a 10-inch wheel. So we're talking little scooters, and that kind of looks like fun, something along those lines. But just a all-out, non-stop, get there race, yeah, I don't think I'm going to do that anymore. But I was able to cannonball across the United States, break the world record, and I still, at the age of almost 57, I still don't have a speeding ticket under my belt. And I'm kind of proud of that. Okay, all I got's Richard on here. Nobody else had any. If anybody has any questions, please feel free to throw them out there. To my knowledge, the big record, the overall Cannonball record is 26 something. And there are other routes people take and other things people do. They have a run called the Southern Cross. It starts in Jacksonville, Florida, in the Atlantic Ocean, and you drive I-10 across the United States to Dog Beach, San Diego. It's 5,300 miles, and there's a team of guys that did that in a Mercedes in 24 hours and like 4 seconds. So they went coast to coast, the shortest distance, in exactly 24 hours. Which, that's a much easier drive because the only major city you hit is Houston. Other than that, it's kind of wide open space. But that's my Cannonball story. If you ever plan on doing a Cannonball, you got to do your research. You need to know where you're going, what you're up against. Like, most of the highway patrol these days drive Chargers. Chargers have these giant taillights you can't possibly miss. Helps you see them. Police cars have headlights that are slightly brighter than normal car lights, and if you know what to look for, you'll see them. They use Ford Explorers. The Explorer taillights in the dark look like the letter C pointing inward. Undercover Explorer, the police package, it has a smooth roof. It doesn't have, either marked or unmarked, it doesn't have the rails. It has steel wheels. It has a non-police version will have the shiny chrome tips on the exhaust. The police one, their exhaust pipes bend downward. They bend down. They're not capped. They're just like open pipes. These bend down. Police vehicles don't have bumper stickers. They don't have "My kid is a great student." They don't have the license plate ring of the dealership the car came from. And they're usually impeccably clean. They also have illegally tinted windows. There's just little things to look for. They'll have an antenna or a nubby antenna, a hockey puck antenna. It's little things like that you need to look for. And if your brain is on that frequency, you will see undercovers everywhere. There's police packages on the cars and whatnot. You just kind of learn this as you're going along. At this point in my life, I drive, like I said, and I'm going 62. I don't speed. I'm pretty mundane. But there's people that will drive old patrol cars, buy a used patrol car, and people freak out when they see it, but you don't need to, because if the car's older and it's got some knocks and dings and scratches, it's not a patrol car. It's just not. I mean, it's an old car. And there are security companies that doctor up their vehicles and look like police vehicles, and they're not. Things like that. But that is my live stream for today, the Cannonball Run. It's still going on. It's still out there. I think we are closely approaching a time when you can't get any faster. Come to think of it, the big record is 25 hours and change. Doug Tabbitt has that one in his team, and the guy that broke my record's a 26 something. 26 and some minutes for the solo. And there's just, at this point, we're running out of room to get any faster. Literally. There's nothing left. There's no more, meat on the bone at this point. But I do, an all-out race, I think, isn't going to happen. But these little mini ones, like the musket ball, I think that's great. I think that's funny. Because their times are terrible. Nobody cares. It's just doing the ride. During one of the 2904s, these guys bought an old van. They painted it like the A-Team, and everybody dressed up like a member of the A-Team to do their run. I mean, just stuff like that. They're just making it, it's just an event. It's something to be a part of. And I think that's kind of awesome. All right, well, I'm going to end this live stream. Thanks for tuning in, and have a great day.